Hey there, creatives. This is season 2, episode 19. You're going to be hearing a conversation that I had with registered expressive arts therapist and board certified art therapist and licensed professional counselor, also an author and an artist, um, Jackie Schuld. And she is going to be sharing a little bit about her latest book, which is called Therapy Private Practice, creating a private practice that enriches you as a human and therapist. And I love her ideas. I felt like we had a very resonant conversation. And she has some really great strategies for designing a practice that aligns with the therapist as a person and a human. And she's really breaking the mold. And I just loved our conversation and found that the way she's designing her practice to be bold, unique, and really inspired. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Jackie and myself.
The Creative Psychotherapist is the official podcast of the Creative Clinicians Corner, a practice-building resource for creative psychotherapists. TCP Podcast is the cast for creative, expressive, and experiential-focused psychotherapists curious to learn how to design, build, and scale a thriving private practice. Your host, Raina Lombardi, interviews successful therapists about the tools and strategies they have used to develop creative-focused practices. They also talk about the products, services, and side hustles they have developed using their knowledge and creativity to enhance their therapy practices, make a greater impact in their communities, and diversify their income streams. Welcome. Now here's your host, Raina Lombardi.
Thanks for listening to the Creative Psychotherapist podcast. I am your host, Raina Lombardi, and I'm very excited to welcome my next guest, Jackie Schuld. And she was recommended to me by a former guest, Jennifer Lawrence, who was on the show a while back. And Jackie is a registered expressive arts therapist, a board certified registered art therapist, and a licensed practicing counselor who also happens to be autistic and has ADHD. And she has developed her art therapy private practice to specialize in late identified autism. As a neurodivergent therapist, she's had to reimagine business by tailoring her practice to honor her neurodivergent needs, which runs counter to what is taught in the mental health field, where everything is supposed to be about our clients. She's passionate about this topic because of the norms of the mental health field that are crushing her fellow therapists. And our humanity is being ripped from us, and she wants to change the mental health field so that it's sustainable and enjoyable for all practicing therapists and their clients. She also recently published a book called Therapy Private Practice, creating a private practice that enriches your life as a person and a therapist. Welcome, Jackie. Thank you so much for agreeing to talk with me today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I love the work you do and what you're doing to promote the work we're doing as therapists and creative therapists at that. So thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. When I first started, I was like, who's going to want to listen? But over time, it's really nice to hear the feedback and that people feel honored and supported. Because when I was listening to podcasts initially, I couldn't find any that were about the expressive arts therapies
Yeah.
specifically.
Hmm.
Um, And I thought, well, that needs to happen. I found a couple and it was like somebody recorded one episode and then never did anything again, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I think I probably found that one too, because that feels familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how you structure your practice so that it allows you to serve your clients in the
Hmm.
best way possible while honoring what you need as an individual.
Yes, I think one of the biggest things that has impacted this is acknowledging that my needs change with time. Because there was some
Mm.
part of me that thought I need to find this ideal as a therapist, like the ideal schedule, the ideal policies, the ideal everything, and that it would never change. Like now that I say it, it sounds ridiculous, but that's what my mind was doing. And the reality is, my needs are shifting, my clients' needs are shifting, and so it's kind of giving myself permission to change how I run my business as I change.
Mm.
um, an example of that would be I recently moved across the country from Tucson, Arizona to New Jersey.
Oh, wow.
And that meant I needed to close my art therapy studio in person and take my business online. And, you know, I gave myself permission to do that. That, like, hey, I'm moving and I want to keep doing what I'm doing. And guess that means I'll go online. Or another example is I'm currently only seeing clients once a month, which is not how I normally do things. However, I'm in a period of my life where my mind is just like a buzz with creativity and writing, and I really need to give it the space to pour out. And so I'm finding basically what I'm doing right now is seeing all my clients in 1 week and then taking the other 3 weeks off for all my creative endeavors.
That's really awesome. I
Yeah.
don't know any, like, I haven't heard other people doing that. I've heard people like doing that as a temporary thing. Like they have a book
Hmm.
chapter that they have to write, or they're writing a book and they've carved out that period, almost like a mini sabbatical or something from their
Hmm.
practice. But
Yeah.
that's your regular monthly schedule all the time.
Yes, though I should say I just started it in September. And so we're only in October, but what it started because I did take a creative sabbatical for the whole month in July. And that, oh my gosh, the expansion I felt there, it was just incredible. And when I came back, it was, I could notice with such acuity how much things impacted me that I never noticed before. And so that's when I really realized, okay, it's time for another change.
I love that you're listening really deeply and intently to what your body's telling you. And sometimes I think it's really difficult for us to do that when we're in our typical routine because like come to a homeostasis around it. Like,
Mhm.
okay, if we're managing this like level of stress, that becomes the norm. And it's not
Mhm.
until we give ourselves that slowdown,
Yeah.
that break, that our
Yeah.
body's like, thank you. Gosh, I've been trying to
Yeah.
tell you.
Yeah. I was so surprised during my creative sabbatical. Like a good portion of it was just spent mourning. Like it wasn't
Mhm.
all just like, woo, joy. It was like there was suddenly space to feel everything and to think about life and to like, but it was mourning in a really good, healthy way. Like it was a good thing I was still in therapy. Brought up a lot of things for me to talk to my therapist about. So,
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that you're giving yourself that time because I would imagine that that then allows you to come back to your clients in a different way. Did you notice a shift in how you were able to hold space for people after giving yourself that space?
I think it's Mm, if I had to just like pick an answer, it would be no.
That's
But the
okay.
nuanced answer is more that I'm far more excited to see my clients now than before. I think I was so tired before that it was like kind of like a checklist thing, like, okay, get it done, get it done. And now I find in the structure I'm in, like I'm looking forward to my clients. Next week is the week I meet with all my clients, and I'm excited to see like what topics they're going to bring up. And it's also a new structure in that, I meet with them once a month, and then I give them art activities to do every single week that we're apart, that's focused
Oh,
on like the issues we're discussing. So I'm also like so excited to see what they've made, and like it's going to be really fun.
I love that. I I think it's really important for us as individuals to honor our own way of doing the work, to find our own way. I know at
Yeah.
first it feels like there's a lot of pressure to kind of conform to some kind of rigid adherence of a model. And while there may be some value to that for very specific protocols, I find it so limiting and like soul sucking it for me.
Hmm.
Like I need to have that ability to shift and change and integrate new
Yeah.
information, to do things differently.
Hmm.
And I mean, it sounds like that's what you're doing, thinking
Yeah.
like, okay, I know I'm only meeting with my clients once a month, but that doesn't mean that I'm not still creating the opportunity for therapeutic um, insight and uh, development to happen while you're not seeing each other, that you're probably having to take some time to craft whatever homework um,
Yes.
you're giving each client to
Hmm.
create for 3 weeks.
Hmm. Definitely. And I want to acknowledge that when we make shifts in our businesses, like it doesn't mean that every client will necessarily come with us.
Mm,
And that's okay. I feel like in grad school we're taught to like contort ourselves around our clients. And I absolutely want what's best for my clients, and I acknowledge sometimes that isn't me. Like,
mhm.
and that's okay. Like when I shifted to this monthly model, there were one or two clients that, I found, well, we worked together to find someone who could provide them the weekly therapy they were wanting and still needed. And then there were like a bunch of new people that were like, oh my God, I didn't want to do weekly therapy, but I heard you're doing this once a month thing. That's more my pace. So it was just interesting to
Lovely.
see, yeah, that like, and yeah, it works out. Like everyone's always afraid, like, will I get clients if I do this? Will I this? Will I that? And like it does work out with time.
Mhm. Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that because I think that there's real value for other people to hear that it is okay to craft the schedule that you need
Yeah.
for your season of life, whatever season that happens to be in, and that
Hmm.
there will be people that, you either retract or you repel, right? And that's okay. If you
Yeah.
repel some people away, those weren't your people, right? That wasn't the right
Right.
fit for the relationship, and that's totally fine.
Hmm.
Um, but you're right about fear kind of getting in the
Oh
way
God.
there.
Yeah. I think that's one of the themes I write about most in my book. It's just how frequently fear comes back, where you're like, oh, I dealt with you. Why are you back?
Mhm.
But like it's at least for me, I'm always in conversation with fear, it seems. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I kind of view it as like a talisman where when it comes around, it's like, okay, I see you there. I know what you're about.
Yeah.
This means I'm at the growing edge
Mm.
of where I'm pushing out even more.
Yeah.
And the more I learn to listen to what fear is saying, but not necessarily follow its
Yeah.
guidance.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually an opposite action. Um, the better I am for it,
Yeah.
right? But if I listen to fear and follow its guidance, the the more constricted and restricted I
Yes.
feel personally, but also in my business.
Yeah. I like what you're saying about it being at your growing edge, because when I say fear comes back, it's not always the same topic, right? Like at the beginning, when I started my private practice and I was raising my fees to a fee that was significantly higher than the average in Tucson, I had so much fear around the judgment of other therapists. Like
Oh, yeah,
I mean, and they can be ruthless. My gosh.
absolutely.
And now that I've been at that fee and even higher for at least 2 years, like I don't care anymore. It doesn't even like cross my mind. And so it's almost funny to look back at how scared I was. Like, what are they going to think of me? And now I'm like, well, they can think what they want. I'm confident enough in knowing like what I do works for me, and that I can ethically, not just ethically, I hate that word in some ways, because like we throw that around as therapists, like what you're doing isn't ethical. And,
According
we
to who?
thank you. And we use it as a judgment piece. So what I'm
Mhm.
more trying to say is what I'm doing is in line with my own values, and
Mm.
I'm at peace with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I've done a fair amount of reading on like business development according to mission and values and the alignment of those things and how important that really is because if our business isn't aligned with our values, it it just makes it so much harder to
Yeah.
operate. It's like you escape a system because you don't agree with the value system that it's operating in. The last thing you want to do is recreate that same
Yeah.
wheel over,
Yep.
but I see a lot of people doing that because it's known, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what we know, so we recreate
Yeah.
it.
When I totally did that with my private practice. Like,
Me too.
and so it was one of the things that encouraged me to write my book, is that I was really examining the belief systems in myself that I was, because once, let me back up here. Basically, it was like Mother's Day, and I was thinking about my life, and my mother has passed away, and I was thinking about how much I missed her and how tough my life was feeling. And I realized, like, I I was fully responsible, and that
Right.
no one was going to save me but me. And I guess this ties to my mother, just in that like she was the one person that always loved me the way I want to be loved. And so it was just like this day of contemplation, and I really kind of used it as a turning point of like, all right, you need to be your own mother now. And that encouraged me to start making the changes in my business to take care of myself.
Wow, I love that. I love that you did that and that you're able to do that. There's the part of me that is motherless,
Mm,
because I lost my mom several years ago, really resonates with that. There's I lost both my parents, so I am
mm,
parentless. And what you're talking about, it really becomes part of that inner exploration of like, who am I now that I don't have these people that have been there for me my entire life and taking care of me, and they were always there, right? I could
yeah.
rely on them. And they're kind like in the back of my mind, I would think, well, if something ever didn't work out, I could always ask my mom for
Hmm.
help, right?
Yeah.
Now don't have her to ask for help.
Yeah.
and and that shifts things because it
Hmm.
means, okay, we have to be even more responsible for our business, because our business is responsible for the earnings that are necessary to take
Hmm.
care of ourselves in the
Yeah.
ways that we need, which
Yep.
means we have to parent the business too.
Yeah. And when I started, or at that time, I was single. And so there was also, and I started my private practice as single. And so there was also this extra weight of like, this is your livelihood. I had no nest egg. It was just like, you better make this work. And I'm in many ways, I'm actually really grateful for that. It really just gave me the momentum. And now that I'm married, I see in some ways it was easier to be so flexible and so like, let me try this and this and this, because like it didn't impact anyone but me. It was a
Mhm.
lot, I could be like bam 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 bam.
And
So
make
whereas like
changes
now,
quick.
yeah, whereas now I mean, it's a positive thing, but I check in with my husband to be like, hey, what do you think about this?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, it's different in those situations. Uh, that pressure though, it's like it's there, right? If you've been working through COVID times in your practice, right? That was like a of big wave of fear
Yeah.
that kind of rippled through, and people were really anxious and freaking out, at least where I am, and the
Hmm.
people that I talk to in community. Feel like every time something major happens, there's like, is my
Yeah.
business going to be able to handle it? And how do you create a sense of security?
Hmm.
um how do you structure that in your business so that when those kinds of things happen,
Hmm.
you don't have to worry so much, that you know that, okay, I have a structure here and it's going to work itself out.
Hmm. For me, I set my fees at a level that takes care of me in multiple ways. So it's not just for the present, like my present budget. It's also for my retirement and for my vacations and for sick days and for savings. Like I'm doing those things um, in my fee. So um, and that's what's allowing me, for instance, to take this risk of moving to a monthly model. um, it was like, will I get enough clients to do this? And that was a risk that I was willing to take, because I had savings in my business that I was like, well, if it doesn't work out, like one, I have a little bit of savings, and two, I can always go back to like, meeting weekly. But it's working out, so not a problem.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like it would be wonderful if more of us were embracing this idea that our fee isn't about accommodating other people's needs.
Yeah.
Our fee is about really ensuring that our needs are met and that we're in a stable position.
Hmm.
Because I kind of think about it in terms of like, with like attachment theory, right? If a parent is dysregulated and their child is struggling and they're overwhelmed, and the parent is overwhelmed, the parent's ability to really adequately care for and help that child
Hmm.
regulate is impaired, because
Hmm.
they haven't taken care of that themselves.
Right.
And I feel like that happens in the way our
Hmm.
system it's like a systemic thing, right? Like,
Yes. Yeah, like I don't blame therapists. I get it. Like it's the fee, not the fees, but the mental health industry in general pays so low compared to our skill set and the demand. It's just, yeah, it's something else. I write a lot about it in my book, because it needs to be different. And I think the mental health field attracts people who are helpers and servers. And so we don't question as much about the fee, or like whatever we're paid. I think when I graduated I was at an internship site and they offered me a job, and it was going to be $35 per client hour. And this was as an independent contractor. And like $35 an hour, someone else might think like, oh, that's great. And it's like, no, that is only what you get when you meet with that client face to face. Like, I'm not going to see 8 hours of clients a day, let alone like that means they give me absolutely no benefits and all my taxes get pulled out of that. Like,
Yeah.
I was great. I was pissed. I'll just say it. I was like, I did the math and it was like equal to something like a salary of like 20,000 a year. It was like so ridiculous that
Egregious.
thank you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That like,
Right.
and I really liked those therapists that were running that place. And so I feel like, again, we end up perpetuating the systems that are harming us. Like, we as
Mm-hmm.
therapists get tired. We don't want to see as many clients. So some people set up group practices, and then you're essentially taking from other therapists so that you can rest more. Like, and it's just this self-feeding cycle of burnout. It's, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I see that a lot. Like when I first started, I decided to become paneled, and I took Medicaid, and the reimbursement model here for Medicaid is abhorrent. The
Mm,
fees are gross and they haven't been adjusted. They I think maybe they just recently did an adjustment. I'm not on a panel anymore, so I'm not paying
yeah.
attention as much,
Yeah.
but it was like they hadn't given a raise in 20 years. Like what other industry doesn't get a raise in 20 years?
Yeah.
But somehow that's okay?
Yeah. And what other industry is so mentally and emotionally demanding? Okay, there's other ones. Like, but that, like, we
Right.
just also don't acknowledge how difficult our job is. Like, okay, yes, we're physically okay. Well, that's not even true. Sitting somewhere for 8 hours straight is not good for your body. And so, like,
Yeah.
there's just a lot. And then to add to it that I'm autistic, I get extra drained from interacting with people. And so it was like, not only am I dealing with norms in the mental health industry that are abhorrent for any therapist, then like I have like extra needs on top of that. So it just felt like, I mean, to use the spectrum, that I'm like on the other end over here and what they're doing is on this end. I'm like, oh my God, there were many times I contemplated leaving the field, like not being a therapist anymore, because it was like, I don't know if I can do this.
Hmm. Yeah. I think when we like perpetuate the systems, right? If we go out and we say, okay, I'm going to do my own practice and I'm taking this insurance and now I'm going to switch to a group model, and then you start to try and divvy up the insurance fees, that's when
Yeah.
you get people getting paid $25 an hour as an independent contractor, $35. I mean, I've heard people getting paid 20.
Yep.
And
Mm-hmm.
oh, that I like sent me the shivers. I'm like, that's
I know.
that's like, gosh, that's something that you could wait tables and make more than that. Like
Oh
and
yeah.
not be
Oh
as
yeah.
stressed at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's a physically demanding job, but and sometimes it's stressful, mentally, because you're dealing with grumpy people or hungry people, but it's not life or death, right? It's a completely different set of circumstances, but you make more than
Yeah.
um, what some of these places are offering, and you still end up, in order to make enough money on that
Mm-hmm.
hamster wheel. When I hear people talking about like, well, it's normal for me to see 35 people or 38 people in a
Mm.
week,
Oh my God.
I'm like, that's not normal. That is not
No,
normal. The 40-hour work week is not meant to be that level of intensity, that level of
no.
onness,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
yet that's what's happening.
When I want to be clear in my, like, even in my model of working 1 week a month, my max is 20 clients in that week. And it's crazy to think there are many therapists out there that are like working double what I do every single week. Every
Right.
single week. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I don't have the constitution for that.
Hmm.
Especially like the individual work. I like breaking it up, groups and individual. That
Hmm.
kind of helps balance my energy
Yeah.
out. But oh, just thinking about it, seeing, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. No,
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that you and I are discussing, like, this isn't the fault of therapists. It's not like it's,
no.
they're doing what they can with what's out there. And I think that's why so many of us start a private practice and start doing other things, because that's really the only way, well, to kind of have the freedom and flexibility to design something that fits your needs and honors them.
Hmm. To live life on our own terms, right? It's so
Yeah.
interesting to me. Like, that's what we're trying to get our clients to do, right? To step out of their comfort zone, to step out of the broken systems that are caging them in,
Yeah.
and to construct a life on their own terms, their own values, their own beliefs, and live in a really aligned way. And
Yeah.
yet, when therapists start to do that, there's often some judgment um, about them, like, they're not as good of a therapist because they're, choosing to do that, or their
Yeah.
fees are so much, or they're not being part of the insurance,
Right.
framework.
Hmm.
Therefore, they're contributing to lack of access and all of
Yeah.
these things. It's like, wait a minute, why are you blaming the individual?
Hmm.
It's a systemic thing that goes beyond our profession.
Right. And like, I'll just speak for myself here, but like, I specialize in late identified autism, and I have time to research and learn more, and to, like, I do so much writing and so many things related to this topic that I would not have time for if I was, or even the energy for. Forget time. Like, if
Mhm.
you're seeing, for me, if I'm seeing more than 5 clients a day, actually it's probably more like 4 clients a day, I have very little capacity for anything mental or emotional afterwards. I'm just kind
Mm.
of that, yeah, I'm not of much use to myself. So I think I'm a far more educated and prepared and happy therapist, like, for my clients. Like, so yeah, I argue that, I think, like, when someone's like, oh, I need to find a therapist, one, I'm always like, okay, what are you looking for?
Mhm.
And then make sure you find someone that is their topic. Like, another thing that happens with the way the system is that there's so many therapists that are generalists, and that's because a lot of the mental health organizations are just, churning people through, like, oh, see this person, oh, see this person, you don't really get a choice. And so, like, I see where in some ways that's necessary, but then you have someone who knows surface level information about things, and
Right.
that's why, like, so many autistics have horrible experiences in therapy, because
Right.
many, we're not really educated about it in grad school, and we're not educated about most conditions with any depth in graduate school. I mean, how could we, when there's, we're covering a wide spectrum, I get it. And so,
Right.
like, a lot of education is up to us
Mhm.
once we graduate, and there has to be time for that.
You're right. I agree. There's something to be said about not only time for that research and education, but also time for client specific
Yeah.
research,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like your client shares with you their affinity for a certain genre of something, whether that be
Yeah.
music, writing, a film, whatever.
Yeah.
If you're really burned out, you're
Mm-hmm.
not going to have the energy to make an effort to investigate that, listen to it, read it, view it, whatever, so that you
Yeah.
can better relate to their experience. Because if they're sharing that information with
Mm-hmm.
you, that's a rich source of material for you to better understand them. But if you
Yep.
don't have that time, it's a missed
Mm-hmm.
opportunity.
Right? Like I have clients who will tell me like, "Oh, I'm reading this book, but I'm not sure about some things." I will go and read that book because again, like I want to connect and like I find it interesting because it's in my special interest topic. Or even like I've had a client say like, "I watched this series, it meant so much to my life." And I went and watched that series even though it was not my thing. But like because
Yeah,
like you're saying, like I really want to understand them and relate, not just relate, more like connect on the
connect.
level. Yeah.
Hmm. Right. Well, you're better able to understand their symbolic language, I
Hmm.
think, to a
Yeah.
certain degree, right? Because
I
if they're
forget we're
making,
art therapists, or actually, I shouldn't make assumptions about you being an art therapist, but that we are
I
in a
am.
creative. Okay. You're like, I am. It's just fun to have someone throw out symbolic language. I was like, oh, yeah, I forgot. We speak the same language.
Right. But if we listen to the music that they're listening to and they're saying
Mm,
this song is really important to me, and there's just something about it I feel like really captures this, right?
yeah.
When we listen to it, we're now going to be more queued up to hear
Hmm.
certain things, to understand even the just the felt sense of the sound quality, right? What does that
Yeah.
deliver, and how they're experiencing the world? That's really important.
Yeah.
But you can't do that in a burn and turn.
Yeah. You saying that reminds me, sometimes one of the art assignments I'll give clients is to create a playlist that captures, a specific topic in their life. And so, yes, of course, I'm like, oh, I'm going to listen to it
Right.
when they're done with it. So yeah, I do. When there's space and time on our side, I can have that feeling of excitement and enthusiasm. But when I'm overloaded, it switches to a feeling of a to-do list and like, oh my God, another thing on my plate.
Yeah. So for therapists that feel like, okay, I have a practice and I'm on the treadmill and
Oh,
I'm doing it, but
yeah,
I know that I don't have it set up the way it would feed me.
yeah.
Um, right. Where would you recommend they start? Is there like a starting kind of exploration or creative intervention that you would recommend for them
Oh,
to kind of start to figure out what kind of changes they could make?
when you said creative intervention, I wish I had one. I was like, that's cool. But it's much more straightforward. I think it's starting with, for envisioning, for not envisioning, thinking for where you're at right now. What would you prefer your client caseload to look like? Meaning, how many clients a day do you want to be seeing? And and I'm assuming most people will see clients every week. I know they're not all like me. So we'll stick with that structure. But once you know that, then you can start to make more decisions about your fee. Um, because the fee is really what's going to sustain you to make the changes you want to make.
Mhm.
And so that's also where I started. Was I think originally I was shifting down to 4 clients a day, 5 days a week. And so I was like, okay, I need my fee to be this. and and I've adjusted my fee over time based on like the changes I'm wanting to make. So for example, right now my fee is $250 for the hour that I meet with clients. And that's enough, seeing 20 clients a month, that it meets my needs.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I thank you for sharing that. A lot of people are reluctant to share their fees, and I think that that's encouraging.
Yeah. It's actually down from what it was when I saw people in studio. I was at that time it was 300. Um, but I just what I'm doing now, I don't need as much money since my writing and my other creative endeavors are making money. So I was like, okay, I think I might lower it a little right now. So that's also
Mm,
the thing. I can be flexible to go either way.
I love that you're finding a way to balance your artist identity and your therapist identity,
Yeah.
um, by the way you're structuring your therapy business. Because if you lived by that traditional model,
Hmm.
you just wouldn't have the energy, space, time, capacity to create other things that other people are
Yeah.
interested in consuming because they're finding them valuable, and that brings in earnings in that area.
Yeah. And that area of my life was never intended to make money. That wasn't my drive. I just love creating. I love writing. I love painting. I love all sorts of things. And I wanted time for that. And ironically, it's all my writing now that brings me every single client. I never would have thought that. So,
Wow. Are
uh,
you just focusing on blogging on your website?
I no longer host my blog on my website. It's on Medium because
Oh,
another therapist suggested I try Medium just to reach a wider audience. And I don't know why, but Medium has so many neurodivergent readers. And it was like they found me and I found them. And I was like, dang. And I say that because I also write about other topics like therapy, private practice, or, this and that. And like nobody reads those. I don't think there's a lot of therapists on there, but anything I write related to autism gets like a lot of views. So some of it was just luck, I guess. But
no, that's
anyways, point
really
being,
good to
they
know.
all of my clients now say like they found me through Medium. And that's also wonderful because if they've found me through my writing, they know my style. They
Mm.
know how I think, how I work on the, and so I'm also finding clients that align with me, like my personality, and it's so much better because I'm really big on a kind of a screening process for both of us being the client and I, like, are we going to be a good fit? It's, they're investing a lot of money. I want
Yeah.
to meet them where they're at and be, yeah, a good fit. So I'm turning away far less people now since it's like we automatically kind of jive with each other.
That's beautiful. I think that's really valuable too, because people ask, like, does blogging really make a difference? Is that really going to impact? Do I need to do that? That feels like a lot
Mhm.
of effort and work. And I think for some people, maybe blogging isn't the thing. Maybe there's another way that you're able to use your voice and get your message out there. But if you love writing, I think, like what you're saying, it's so true. You're giving people an opportunity to already know you, develop like an affinity for you, to trust you, to see you as the person that they specifically want and believe will be best able to help them with their unique needs and circumstances. That's
Mhm.
powerful. I think
Yeah.
that also allows you to command a higher fee because people are committed. They've already developed a
Yes.
relationship with
Hmm.
you.
Yeah. And I liked what you were saying at the beginning, about me liking writing, because I think some people, hear about me finding clients through Medium and they're like, oh my God, I must write too, even though they don't like writing. And I'm like, oh my God, don't do it. Don't do it, because I write multiple essays a day because it's fun. And I pair all my essays with art. And like, no, it's my autistic like special interest. And so like most people cannot and will not operate at that level. Like, and so I think that's also part of why I'm so successful is I'm releasing 1 to 2 essays every day. I would never encourage someone else to do that if they don't want to, like if they
Mhm.
don't have that natural drive. So what I talk about in my book is finding something that aligns with who you are. Like some people are great at little TikTok videos and others it's more like podcasts. But it's finding something that you enjoy doing so that it makes it sustainable for you and where you're really like cultivating an audience in that area. Like,
Mhm.
yes, I'm sure I'm missing all the YouTube people and I'm missing all the podcasters, but like, or podcast listeners, but that's not me. I want people who align with me, and me is most appropriately showed. Anyways, see, this is what I mean. I write far better than I speak. So anyway.
No, I think that's lovely. And I agree. When I work with people on marketing relating to their private practice, that's what we talk about. It's like you don't have to do all of the things, but
Hmm.
pick something that you enjoy doing. If you don't like
Yeah.
in-person networking and that's not your jam,
Yeah.
don't force yourself to do it. You don't
Yeah.
have to.
Yeah.
If you love writing, you can make that like how you connect. Or perhaps you really enjoy speaking. Maybe you don't
Hmm.
like the mingling piece of networking, but you really like speaking and educating people about your niche or specialty, or maybe the population you best serve. That's an
Hmm.
opportunity. You don't have to do all of the things unless you want to
Yeah.
do all of the things. I'm a nerd and I like a lot of different things, and
Yeah.
I get bored too
Hmm.
easily,
Yeah.
so I constantly have to be switching it up. I do a little writing, I do
Yeah.
speaking, I like
Hmm.
networking. Um
Yeah.
it's finding what works for you, but the last thing you
Hmm.
want to do is like put something on your to-do list that's going to feel
You're
like
like,
exhausting,
yeah.
right?
And I do want to add, there is, yes, a level though of fundamentals, meaning like have a good website. Like you don't have to pay money for it. I made my own. Like I'm not so good doesn't mean like, but meaning like where it showcases you and what you do to distinguish you from other therapists. And before people were finding me on Medium, many commented about my website and how much it resonated with them.
Mhm.
And so no matter how, like no matter what way people find out about me, they're of course going to go to my website, and that needs to
Yeah.
be on point for to like then have them reach out to me.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Um, in your book, do you offer any guidance for folks of like how to overcome and work with their fear about implementing these kind of big changes in
Yeah.
their system? Because I
Mhm.
love what you're talking about, and I really believe all the things that you're doing are incredibly valuable and I think inspired, and that we should be working towards that as a profession, because then we're modeling that for our clients too,
Yeah.
right? Or because we're setting boundaries and creating
Hmm.
structure in our life in a way that is feeding us and nurturing for us so that we can be there for clients and our people in our life,
Hmm.
right? And ourselves.
Right. And when I raised my fees, because the first time I raised my fees, it was a big jump. That was like the big shift. Ever since then, it's been more subtle shifts. And that it was so hard to have those conversations with clients because of like the fear in me. But working through those fears and really examining my own beliefs around money and this and that made me such a better therapist. Like it meant I could then go deep on those topics with my clients. So
Mm.
when money came up, for instance, well, so I had one client that when I raised my fee, she was automatically like, yeah, I can do that. And normally, you'd be like, cool, and move on. But then I like paused because I knew her. I was like, do you think that quick decision mirrors ways you make decisions in other parts of your life? Because I knew she likely could not afford my new fee. And so it was a chance to like, I was no longer scared to go to those deep places about money. Or I had other clients that were like, wow, they also owned their own business and they're like, I've been wanting to raise fees but scared. And so like it's really weird watching you do it and having like a model. So it's so cool. It's just reverberates to your clients in many
Mhm.
ways.
Yeah. So do you make some
Oh yeah,
recommendations on
sorry.
like,
Yeah, I
no,
didn't
that's
even answer
okay.
your first question.
That's all right. It's
Yeah, I
good.
was looking back
Tangents.
through my table of contents because I have a whole section with like 8. Well, when I say chapters, each chapter is an essay, so they're like 2 to 3 pages. I'm an autistic. It's like give me my information quick. So one section is all on getting your fees and money in order. So it's all about like one of my chapters is called high fees mean you're a capitalist.
Oh.
I know someone said that to me.
Oh,
Yeah. And so,
no.
but it was, yeah, it sucked, but it was a good chance for me to sit with that and really examine why that hurt so much. And then write a whole essay about how that isn't true and how to respond if someone says that.
Mm.
Because a lot of times it's us saying that to ourselves.
Right.
Like, I think that only hurt so much because there was part of me that was worried that's what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I have that section all on money. And then I think one of my favorite sections though is called thought patterns that impact you. So it's like looking at like the martyrdom mentality we often have, like I must serve everyone and I must help everyone. And setting our fees that way, setting when we're available that way. Like I know some therapists that see clients at night because they're like, well, that's the only time my clients are free. And like, that's fine if you like working at night, but if that gets in the way of your own energy schedule or your family, whatever, then it doesn't work for you.
Right.
So, um, I guess that's really at the heart of my book. My book isn't about here's the one right way to do everything. My book is
Mm-hmm.
more about how do you discern what's right for you
Mm-hmm.
and how do you acknowledge all the shit getting in the way of that. Like
Mm.
like kind of like the capitalist thing. Like, oh, if
Yeah.
I'm and yeah, sorry, I just got stuck in my thoughts there. So I'm gonna
That's
pass
that's
it back to
okay.
you.
Yeah, no, what I really hear you saying is like you're not writing a prescriptive approach to guide people of like this is what you need to do. It's more about how do you check in with yourself to discover what is it that you uniquely need and
Yeah.
how do you overcome the limiting barriers, beliefs, and conditioning that might be
Hmm.
influencing your ability to get there? That was
Yes.
kind of what I was hearing you
Thank
say.
you. That's nice.
You're
And
welcome.
I'm trying to be open with my own experiences, like sharing my fees, like that. When I started my private practice, my sliding scale went as low as $35, $40. So like, and like, going, and then eventually all of my clients were at $300 per session and kind of showing how I got there and all of the stuff that came up for me So it's not just like, hey, it's all rosy. It's like, hey, this is the reality. And I wanted to be that open because I couldn't really find other people talking about that. And like that's what I wanted. I wanted to know, what is it really like? Don't give me like the, yeah, you can do it and it's all great. Like that's not relatable to me.
Well, it's not accurate either, right?
Yeah.
It's hard. There are some wonderful moments and aspects. I certainly would never, I would really try hard to never go back to working for a corporation or a nonprofit organization. I prefer to work for myself and to be able to make autonomous decisions about when I take time off, and not
Yeah.
have to like answer to somebody else on how I structure my life. The idea that I have to get permission from somebody who I'm providing a service for in order to
Yeah.
take vacation doesn't make sense to me. I just that does not connect on so many levels.
Yeah.
So, but there are times where I'm like, okay, this has been really a tough season. I've gotten through it, but it was really tough. It was really stressful. And it's not, so it's not all like roses and sunshine.
Yeah. So when it is in a tough period, I think about how much harder it would be if I wasn't in private practice. Like when I moved across the country, like, yes, that was challenging for many different reasons, but the fact that I ran my own practice made it so much easier. Or,
Yeah.
and for me being autistic, uh, change and transitions are really just difficult and energy draining. And so that was why I took one of the reasons I took the creative sabbatical. I didn't plan that in advance. It was just that once I got here, I was like, oh my God, like I didn't know I'd be this tired. I
Hmm.
was like, wow. I was like, I really just every bone in my body was just like rest. And
Hmm.
that I could then decide to do that. uh, I felt like the luckiest person on the planet, quite frankly. Like every day I woke up, I was like, I'm so lucky. And then
What a
I'd like,
gift.
yes, right? Like it was so weird. It was so like, I mean, I don't think I've not worked for a month since, or like been in, it's just, when's the last time I took a whole month off? If I, it was before I was 16. It was, like, yeah,
Yeah.
it was just, so anyway, sorry, I could go off on that
Yeah,
forever. It
no,
was
no.
just
I'm
like, yeah,
I'm thinking about that question for myself. Like, when is the last time I took an entire month off?
right. That you weren't intentionally doing something, that it was
Hmm.
just a month of rest. Like, yeah, I've taken a month to go study somewhere or like this or that, but a month where you're like, nope, I'm not doing anything.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's been a really long time. I've
Yeah.
taken I've taken, a couple weeks here and there. I did take a lot of time off for grief,
Mm.
which I kind of felt the same way at that time. I was like, there would be no way I would get fired. I wouldn't have a job,
Yeah.
if I didn't, if I was working somewhere else because of how much time I took off that year.
Hmm.
That whole year was a lot of time off, in different bits and spurts for different reasons. But um, that was a gift, right? The gift that
Yeah.
having a practice and doing this work on my own terms afforded me.
Yeah.
Um, and I see it how it is impacting other people who are going through that life transition and they're in
Yeah.
a place and how hard it is
Yep.
on them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
I know. I
so
remember when my mom died, I was working somewhere and I had 3 days of grief leave.
like, what's
Or
that?
yeah, for real. It was the weirdest thing to go back to work after 3 days. I was like, what?
Like, come on. I was in such a like dissociative state at three
Yeah.
days
Yeah.
after.
I know, right? Like I don't even remember that time period. It was such, yeah, such grief that I, yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, that's gross. That, like, who came up with that idea?
yeah,
Clearly does not have any empathy, or like doesn't do feelings.
I know. Yeah,
Um, right? Like,
yeah.
there, you need more than 3 days to be human again, to go back to, especially as a therapist, when we're listening to other people and what other people are going through. And like, in that
Yeah,
time, what other
yeah.
people are going through from our perspective, when you've just, your whole life has just feel like it's turned upside down and crushed,
Mm-hmm.
like, it's very difficult to empathize. It's very difficult because it doesn't, what other people are saying just doesn't seem significant.
That's so true. Like my mom had cancer, and so as she was dying, I wasn't a counselor at the time, but I remember like people would complain about things, and I was literally like, "Shut the fuck up! Like you don't know pain." Like,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. Mine too. It was, it's not easy, right? Like that whole, the whole process, right? Because it starts before,
yeah,
and yeah, it's enduring. And as a therapist, right, we want to be empathic, and like, I needed the time that I took off when I
yeah.
took it off. And sometimes I was like, all right, I, I went back to work, but I was like, nope, I need more time. I'm taking
Mm-hmm.
more days because I need more time
Yeah,
in order to be able to be empathic.
yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I could talk to you forever, Jackie.
Oh, thank you.
um, but I know we're on a time schedule. And but I do want listeners to be able to find you and to be able to find
Mm-hmm.
your book, because I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it is a valuable resource for others who want to create a practice on their terms so that it serves them and their clients equally.
Yeah.
Where can they find more information about you and your book?
Mhm. Um, for me, it's just my website, which is my name, JackieSchuld.com. Try to keep it simple. And on there, I talk about all my books. I have a section there. This book is my most recent book. And so and all my books are on Amazon. So that's another, that's where you
Okay.
can buy them. So yeah.
All right. And is your blog that's on Medium connected to your website, or is that a different?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So like if you click on the blog on my website, it'll be like, I've moved to Medium. And so they can get there that way too.
Awesome.
And I
Well,
do have a ton of essays about private practice on my Medium.
okay.
So that's another way if you aren't into buying books, you can also read essays. So
Short
short little
spurts.
essays, they're like 3-minute reads.
Oh,
So
that's perfect.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have really enjoyed talking with you today. Thank you for being an inspiration for us to be creative in the way we design our practices, and sharing how you're doing things differently. I really appreciate your time.
Yes, well, thank you for giving me the chance to talk about it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Creative Psychotherapist podcast. I really hope that you enjoyed this conversation with Jackie Schuld and myself. If you're in private practice and you're trying to figure out a way to make it work for you, designed for you, um, I think Jackie's book would be a great resource. She's certainly figuring out how to design a practice that really breaks the mold of what we might typically see or think about in the way a practice would look like and operate. And I find that really inspiring, because I think if we're building this business, it really should work for us. We shouldn't be working for it. And if you enjoyed this episode and any of the other episodes and you haven't already, please do rate, subscribe, give us feedback on the show so that we can continue to grow our audience and listenership and improve the work that we're providing to you. Again, thanks so much for listening, and take care, everybody.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Creative Psychotherapist. If you like what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. For show notes, downloads, and additional resources, head over to the website at www.creativeclinicianscorner.com.